I've been working for the Washington State Institute for Public Policy for 15 or 16 years or so. The Institute's been around for about 26 years for the legislature. It's a legislative agency. All of the work that we do comes to us because the legislature has asked the Institute to study something. So our legislature began in the 1990s to be very interested in the concept of evidence-based public policy. And it actually, the first inklings of that became in some legislation that passed in 1994 when it asked for some evidence-based juvenile justice work. And it asked the Institute to go out and try to find out what works and what doesn't, what is evidence-based, and come back with some answers. So we began our work at that time working on the topic, and we reviewed all the information that we could find about what works and what doesn't work, in this case to reduce juvenile crime rates. We looked all across the United States for the best research. We wanted to make sure that the research was really very sound. Random assignment research or just under random assignment, but we wanted very tough comparison group studies so that when he came back to the legislature and said this is evidence-based and this isn't, we could actually kind of come to a conclusion about what was a good investment or not. We then also began to develop a cost-benefit model. So there's really three steps to what we do in Washington State for the legislature. The first is to just say what works and what doesn't, a review of the evidence, the real evidence. The second is to take a cost-benefit look, where we ask what's it worth to us to achieve a reduction in juvenile justice, adult corrections, or now we're into a whole bunch of other areas. So in K-12 education, if we can get more kids to graduate from high school, what's it worth to Washington to get more kids to graduate from high school? So we developed a series of cost-benefit models that try to assess what those public outcomes are worth to people in the state of Washington. And each of those outcomes, of course, costs money to produce. So that sets up the tension for a cost-benefit analysis. You've got the benefits of getting less crime or getting more kids to graduate from high school versus the cost of the kinds of approaches that have been shown to work to achieve those outcomes. So we began supplying that information to the legislature in the 1990s. In the juvenile justice system, it's since expanded off into a whole bunch of different areas, K-12 education that I just mentioned, also the child welfare system. We've done a lot of work there, mental health, substance abuse, developmental disabilities, and early childhood education and prevention programs as well. So we've taken the same kind of analytical approach about what works, what doesn't, what's cost beneficial, what isn't. Those are two tests that we try to apply for our recommendations that we come back to the legislature. The legislature has been able then to use some of those recommendations to actually make some substantial policy changes in the state of Washington, both in our criminal justice system and in our juvenile justice system, and also in other parts of our state government and the child welfare system, for example. And that's why I have such a great job, is because you actually get to do the numbers part of the work, and then you get to actually see and help make sure those numbers are interpreted correctly and see their way either into or not into public policy as the legislature works its magic.